Welcome back, dear listeners, to another episode of An Unexpected Art Lesson, the show where we talk about everything you didn't know about art. As we've journeyed from the shadowy churches of 17th century Rome to the digital worlds of contemporary games, which was quite the adventure, as always, and from canvas to massive urban walls, some of which have eyes, one thing becomes clear. Caravaggio's revolutionary vision wasn't just ahead of its time, it continues to shape how we see and feel, and the art people are making today.
What connects a Counter-Reformation painter to modern game design and street artists? The answer to that is the commitment to emotional truth through visual means. So, what this actually means is Caravaggio helped show us that art could be this visceral, immediate experience rather than an intellectual exercise. It's a way to see the extraordinary within human experience. It illustrates the idea that confronting uncomfortable realities rather than escaping them. And, of course, finally, one other point that this does bring up is it's the idea that there is that light shining in the darkness, revealing what we may prefer to ignore.
Sometimes you have to look at the things and consider things outside of your comfort zone to grow, and it's okay to do that sometimes. So today, when we guide Joel and Ellie through the apocalyptic shadows of The Last of Us, which is so full of weird mushroom zombies that jump scare me so many times, when we stand before a massive Connor Harrington mural on a city building, or experience the psychological journey of Senua through the hellscapes of her mind and have similar experiences with other characters in other games, shows, movies, that showing the emotion in a way that even if you are not in that moment as the viewer, you can still feel it. We are participating in a tradition that Caravaggio established, using light, composition, and very unflinching realism to create moments of emotional truth that transcend their medium. The moments that stick with you, make you think, maybe occasionally haunt your dreams. Looking at you, Uncharted, with your tone shift into survival horror with the weird mummy things when we're trying to find El Dorado. Not mummy, zombie things. Not mummy things. There's a difference. They haven't thrown mummies at us yet. I don't. Actually, no, that's not true.
Uncharted 3.
Fourth one.
Oh, yeah.
With the exploding mummies in the pirate city.
Yeah, exploding mummies is that point where the writers are just going, you know what? They've been followed us along this much. Let's add exploding mummies for good effect.
Yeah, I don't dodge it. I just sprint.
Run!
Run away! Run away!
Referencing the nightmare fuel of both Uncharted and The Last of Us, which I believe that the other horror aspect of that is how many times will they remake that game series? But regardless, it's still fun. And makes you feel like a horrible person by the time you're done, but still a fun game. This does get into the idea that these techniques have evolved. So things like oil paint have now evolved to pixels and spray paint. The idea of church commissions have now evolved to commercial games and municipal art programs. And of course, finally, religious narratives become more secular stories of the human struggle versus the religious iconography that Caravaggio more embodied. However, this does kind of lay out a fundamental goal that these ideas do have their common ground, to create experiences that stop us in our tracks, demand our emotional engagement, and perhaps change how we see ourselves and others. Which, again, if anyone who's played through The Last of Us 2 can say, yeah, by the time you're done, you just have to sit there and go, I'm a horrible person.
Yeah, another piece of media that makes you think is my absolute favorite book of all time, The Book Thief, which is about a young girl who gets adopted by a German couple during the time of World War II because it's very possible that her dad was a communist and her mom just drops her off and then disappears, and just her journey throughout that. And there's so much darkness, but she finds light in the stories that she reads. And one of my favorite aspects about that book, aside from the fact that it's just a beautiful book, the narrator is death. And the way that is handled is just beautiful. The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak, which, a fun fact about him, when I was working at Barnes & Noble, we had him come in for a book signing, and while most authors come in with their publicist and immediately go to the break room because they don't want to get swarmed by people, which I can understand and respect, he was standing around just chatting with people for 10 minutes before one of us realized he was there. He just came in and started talking to people, and he personalized all of our books that he signed. So he's cool.
That is very cool.
Just a little shout out.
And now I have another book I need to read.
I've been told I'm good for increasing people's to-read lists, mostly because I keep publishing things. I have no intention of stopping. I will take over all of your bookshelves.
A noble endeavor, if I ever heard one.
It's a statement that has implications for the future. We'll see what those end up being. I'll figure that out when I get there. But speaking of future implications, cough, cough, cough.
Great segue.
Getting us back on track before we get distracted again.
As we look forward, we do see Caravaggio's influence continuing to evolve and kind of take new places in modern media. Virtual reality experiences that place us physically within dramatically lit spaces. So, for example, the Batman VR experience. Augmented reality street art that changes with the time of day or with viewer perspective. So, things that require sensors to update, or even animated responses, or even augmented reality that reacts to the viewer if it's a larger scale screen. These all are kind of ways that you can be transported within a piece of art.
We need to talk about that at some point. That sounds very cool. I didn't know augmented reality street art was a thing.
The other things, of course, would be increasingly photorealistic games that do capture subtle emotions. So, Senua Hellblade, I feel, would not be nearly as powerful if the technology wasn't there to create those particular spaces, the combat, the facial expressions. And finally, of course, public art that does use tech to create these dynamic lighting effects. So LED bulbs that can actually display particular images, the ability to use darkness and shadow to create these new, more interesting spaces, even through cinema. Same idea does prevail. I'm pretty sure Frank Miller would not have been as popular if it wasn't for Caravaggio, due to how those light and shadow effects work. And of course, what would Caravaggio make of all this? Perhaps he would see that in this modern world, what he sought in his own work is the desire to break through convention, to speak directly to the audiences, and to use whatever techniques necessary to create these authentic emotional responses. I still completely believe that putting his own severed head into a painting, that's one way of getting an authentic response. Also, possibly a psych referral nowadays.
He needed therapy, but we are very pro-therapy here. Yeah, speaking directly to the audience, dear listeners, you know I do that a lot. And not just here. Well, mostly here, but sometimes in other projects, but also using whatever techniques necessary to create authentic emotional responses. I love doing that with music and shows. When I'm telling a story and then I layer in different musical cues, or like the lack of sound. In the season finale of the first season of Beyond the Crumbling Veil, there was a moment like where one character's in the hospital and we're visiting him, and then at a point the DM mentions that we don't hear anything. It's quiet. So something that I did is like a couple minutes before that in the conversation, something happened, we got distracted, started laughing. I faded out all the hospital noises in the laughing. So the listener would have the same moment Oh, it is quiet. We're in a hospital. That's bad. Finding the little thing you need to make people go, oh, so satisfying. From the calling of St. Matthew to the cinematic moments of modern gaming, from the Sorossi Chapel to the sides of city buildings, Caravaggio's legacy reminds us that art is most powerful when it's most human flawed, dramatic, and unflinchingly real. I firmly agree with that as a person. Sometimes it's good to have the idealized, but sometimes you just need something real to make you think and help you realize and process things. And it's to remind you that it's okay to be human. You can still do good. Caravaggio did good when he was on the run for murder. So as we close this exploration, look around your own world. In video games, street art, books, movies, public spaces, you might just spot the techniques of a revolutionary artist who, more than 400 years ago, long before there was internet, understood that light cutting through darkness is more than a visual effect. It's how we make meaning visible.
So now that we've talked about Caravaggio for a little bit, how can we help you, the listener, reflect on what we've just said? Aside from the rewind button. If you want to actually kind of experience this a little bit more, especially with Caravaggio's influence, here's how you can kind of explore and engage with this idea. Look for these Caravaggio-like moments in video games. So when you're playing through The Last of Us, realize what the purpose of some of those points where you're seeing a streetlight or a spotlight, bringing attention to a particular area instead of everything either being completely lit or completely dark. And with lately, one of the things I do have to admit is kind of cool that they've added is photo mode. So, like with The Last of Us, take screenshots of particularly dramatic compositions and see if it helps illustrate what we've been describing here. When you notice how that light guides your attention, creates mood, creates suspense, especially any type of survival-esque games such as The Last of Us or Dying Light.
As I'd say, insert zombie apocalypse game name here. It's a very popular genre. And as you find these moments, you can share it on social media with hashtag Caravaggio Gaming. And tag us, because we love geeking out about video games. I don't know if you've noticed, but we do enjoy geeking out about video games and art and pretty much anything nerdy. Another way you can experience it is go out and explore the world around you. Get outside, touch grass, maybe walk around with a friend. Buddy system is great and you can experience it with someone else and make a cool memory, but seek out muralists who use dramatic lighting and shadow techniques. Photograph street art at different times of day to see if the lighting effect changes or how looking at that art makes you feel when it's bright and sunny versus when it's maybe darker or the sun's about to go down or raining. Compare classical compositions to their street art counterparts. It's fascinating looking at how the old has been made new. And create your own little walking tour of tenebristic street art. And show it off. Share with people the art that you think is cool. Artists deserve all the hype for their hard work.
Exactly.
What are some ways we could play around with this on our own?
For those of you who are curious to kind of see the process that Caravaggio took to create his works, experiment with dramatic single source lighting when in photography. So set up a single light source, put things underneath it, take pictures of it, see what it looks like. Try digital painting using Caravaggio's limited palette approach. There's many wonderful references about that online, and even a few palette examples that you can actually download into your own art program and use from there. work on authentic facial expressions in drawing. So instead of doing like the full body portrait, work on just drawing faces. See how interesting you can make them or authentic. You don't need to do hyper realistic either, but make the expressions feel real.
Good, because I can't do hyper realistic. It will turn into straight up nightmare fuel worse than Bosch.
That is quite terrifying.
I'm not great at faces of people. I'm not. I could probably get there with some practice. Maybe we could talk about that later.
To be continued on that.
Hint, 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 cough, cough, cough. Listeners, you will have to stick around to get fun drawing advice from us, because we want to just keep you listening forever.
Fools! And of course, one of the other major points of Caravaggio is creating these compositions that place viewers uncomfortably close to the action. So look at things like, again, The Last of Us, where some of those being very close to the action kind of adds that feeling of urgency. Try to recreate that in a sketch or a compositional piece and see if you can kind of get the same effect.
Yeah, or just with the picture you're taking on your phone. Just you can mess around with the stuff you have around your house and lights. I'm probably gonna end up doing that with the random collection of things I have on my desk and the very bright plant light I have on my desk that is, I'm happy to say, it is reviving my aloe that I thought I had killed. My aloe is not dead.
Zombie aloe.
At the end of the day, remember, Caravaggio wasn't just a technical innovator. He was a storyteller who understood that how we see something is inseparable from how we feel about it, both in the literal and metaphorical sense. There's a reason phrasing is important. Using certain words that have certain connotations will lead people to having a certain reaction. And whether you're a gamer, artist, or simply someone who appreciates the power of visual storytelling, there's something in Caravaggio's approach that can enrich how you create and experience art.
And with that, though, folks, we are going to close the book on Caravaggio for now. Join us next time when we look into another artistic pioneer whose vision kind of helped shape the world in both the street art and gaming culture, and continues to help shape these visual narratives in new, interesting, and sometimes nightmarish ways. Thanks for listening, y'all.
Catch you next time. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of An Unexpected Art Lesson, the show where we talk about everything you didn't know about art. If you like what we're doing, you can follow us on social media and join the conversation over at An Unexpected Art Lesson on Threads, Blue Sky, and Substack. And you can also support us over on Patreon. Get early access to episodes and other fun things at patreon.com/An Unexpected Art Lesson.